Hello. Today's topic, today's rabbit hole, the last of the highest expression of our three intelligence brain, courage. At the gut level, our highest expression of our gut brain is courage. Now, I'd like everybody just to take a moment and define what courage is for themselves. So go ahead. What is courage? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? It's different for everybody, right? What I'm going to propose is that there's so many different ways of looking at courage. True courage. I'm not talking about bravery, okay? So, at that first level, we have egoic courage. Now, that is bravery. And what do I mean by egoic courage? Well, I think I've gotten up on this soapbox before. There's a lot of fucking ego blaming going on in the spiritual world right now. That ego is so fucking evil. Ego, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? We're human. We are our ego. So yeah, we want to be proud. We want to be strong. We want to have money. And it does keep us sometimes in patterns of dysfunctional behaviors. And I'll give a good example. I don't know when it was. It was sometime in the last year when I realized with a high degree of humility that I had become addicted to fear. And that's why I've experienced chronic and significant anxiety in my life. It's almost hard to remember just how bad it was. But to suffice it to say, I'd had to be medicated for it, and I was even hospitalized for it at one point. I would never wish that on anybody, not my worst enemy, not anybody. And I couldn't understand. I didn't want to be anxious. I hated it. But, and this is how it works. And this is why it's a rabbit hole. The hate I felt for my anxiety kept it present in my life. I didn't allow it to teach me. I didn't accept it for what it was and try to learn from it. So I just kept manifesting it. And in the beautiful present and gift of hindsight, I had become addicted to fear. Now, why? One, because fear gives us that rush of adrenaline that we actually become addicted to in a chemical way. It's purely chemical. But I wanted to think of myself as a survivor, as a warrior, because of my upbringing. I was like, yeah, fuck all those cunts. I'm going to be brave. Well, courage, at least for me, is acting in the face of fear. So, I can't be courageous if I don't feel afraid of something. So this became an identity that I had because I became to see myself as an anxious person because I also saw myself as a courageous, as a brave person. I was stuck in a survivalist mindset. And I do say stuck. But that's okay. We don't have to be stuck our whole lives. And if we are survivalists, hey, sure, spend your life kicking ass and taking names. That's sweet, but there are a couple of different ways to do that, and I'm going to propose a healthier way. Is just be your fucking self. And to be truly courageous. So now we're going to take it to the next level. How much courage does it take to follow your gut? I didn't really realize how much harping on I went on about this stuff until I was talking to a real good friend of mine who is I'm so proud of her. She's a female bodybuilder. She does it the right way. I won't get into the wrong way, but you could probably already imagine that. Steroids, crazed maniacs starving themselves. She is an amazing person. She does all of this just because it's fun. And she doesn't take it too seriously, and she follows her gut. And I didn't realize, and felt really honored when she said, "Oh, I've decided not to do this comp because I remembered what you told me, and I just didn't feel that intuitive pull towards it." Because one day we were having, I don't know, I think I was reading her cards, or we were having a coaching session of some description, and she said, you know, how do I know? How do I know what I should do? How do I make decisions? And I said, your gut will tell you. If you learn to hear it, if you learn to feel it. It's just that push-pull. You've got some ice cream in front of you. You usually feel a pull towards it, so you want to eat it. You might be around somebody that just kind of gives you a creepy vibe. And that how that manifests in our body is we just feel a little bit of a push. We actually will back away from people. Our gut's always there to tell us push or pull. Sometimes there's nothing there. Your gut doesn't fucking care either way, and it's up to your brain or your heart to decide. But other times we have a distinct pull. But there is a courage required to listen to that because it's often not rational. Our brain's like, I have no idea what's going on. I just feel a pull to this thing or this person, and I can't explain it. So the brain checks out, says, I don't get it. It's up to the gut to figure that shit out. And when we act on our gut, when we act on that push or pull, which is hard to do because we don't understand it, that's faith. That's faith in our intuition. So you meet a person, right? You have lukewarm feelings. But something internal just feels right. And you go down that rabbit hole and life unfolds. You get married, kids, whole 9 yards. Or maybe you don't get married. Maybe you spend your lives traveling or tramping or doing whatever it is that you want to do, but you had no idea why you felt that initial pull towards them. Or you get a job. It's not exactly what we want to do, but it earns us a whole bunch of money. Now that life can turn out different. Now we have this job and we have all this money and we don't want the money to stop, but we're not happy in our job and life just feels muted somehow. In this case, chronic stomach problems can actually manifest. The entire time I was anxious, I had stomach issues. They actually diagnosed me with Crohn's disease, but I don't have Crohn's disease. I call that spiritual constipation, but that's a different topic for a different day. It takes work to trust this stuff. And yes, I know, intuition is for hippies and mystics. Now, every single human has intuition. And why is that? Same reason why every human has empathy. The ability to speak to each other is relatively new. Back when we were apes and couldn't talk. Back when we were fucking earthworms. An earthworm has a gut brain. An earthworm knows to go towards food and back away from poison. This is what I'm talking about. So if you don't want to believe in the spiritual aspect of shit, this is purely biological. How the fuck does an earthworm know to move towards something and back away from something? It follows its fucking gut. So if an earthworm can do it, guess what? So can we. But it gets complicated because we're humans and we have other intellectual centers that have their own agendas. It's so common that we mistrust our intuition because we don't understand it, and we're raised to be purely logical and highly rational people. We put a lot of value on our brain. This gets to such an extent that if we feel a push away from something that we think we should want, so that job with all the money, right? For some reason, our gut's saying, nah, don't take it. Don't fucking take it. But our brain's going, money! Yeah, money, power. Get it. And in this way, we can become so fucking conflicted that we cannot make a decision. I knew someone once who could not make a decision because they were gripped with the fear that they would choose wrong. And I looked at him and I said, I don't believe that. I don't believe in right or wrong. I believe in making a fucking decision and dealing with the consequences. I'll get into that in a second. But some people are so like, why do we have a magic 8-ball? So we can actually take that responsibility away from ourselves and put it into this piece of fucking plastic with blue liquid and a little how many ever sided die that says, yes, outcome not good. And we'd rather believe in 8-ball than trust our own gut feeling. So I experience this in my own life, and I experience this every day. Every fucking day. I give it this litmus test. What would I do if I was completely free of fear? So I'm confronted with a decision and I said, what would I do if I was completely free to make a decision? If I already had all the money I need, if I already had the life I wanted, what would I do? And it just helps me see what other things in my life are kind of muddying the waters of my decision making. I've spoken about her before, but the chick that helps me with my own inner conflicts, pointed out to me one day something that I'd already known, but probably didn't want to admit to myself. I tend to say I'm going to do one thing, but do another. What this means is that my gut's telling me to do one thing and my brain or my heart are telling me to do something different. So it suggests an incongruence between the intellectual centers. So can I just trust my gut? I'll explain it. Yeah. So there's a funny analogy I use for this, which is if we think about the brain as the male energy, and I say that because male energy tends to be that doing, that action, and that female energy, as we all know, because when we think of intuitive feelings, we often think of, oh, that's female shit, that's, blah, 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 that spiritual feminine crap. I'm a man, I do things, I make decisions, blah, blah, blah. But we all have male and female energy in us. We all have intuition and we all have that ability to push ourselves. And I see this as the husband and the wife within us, where we think that male doing energy is the one doing everything, but we all know that behind a man, there's a female actually driving a lot of that power. It just kind of makes me giggle. Because we've all watched those fucking rom-coms with the strong man and the meek little wife, but she's actually the one. driving most of the decision making in the household. That's conventional. But some examples of how this is manifested in my life is as simple as I say I'm going to go to the gym, but I mysteriously find myself walking towards the pool. I'll actually tell myself in my head, I'm going to go to the gym and do some lifting, but my feet are like, yeah, nah, we're going to the pool. I want to swim. Or I might want to do the cross trainer, but I find myself on the treadmill. Those are gym examples, but that admittedly is because I'm a gym junkie. Now, how this is a little closer to home and a little more personal. I was on a date. I had been dating this guy for, I don't know. I think it was our 4th date or something. And I was at kind of a come to Jesus point in my life and couldn't really understand why when I'm attracted to someone, that pull is really, really immediate, and it feels a bit like someone's plugged me into a fucking outlet in the wall. And I've never been able to really understand in myself why I don't feel that pull towards very many people. In fact, it's like less than the number of people on one hand small. I've only had 2 relationships. I've really only felt drawn to a handful of people. But this guy ticked all the boxes, right? He was attractive and he had his shit together. He owned his own house, a good job, and he wined and dined me, and we went on a lovely walk, and all that shit was happening that I've been taught to believe that I wanted. And I knew I was facing this decision. Like, I just felt in myself, I felt that intuition that this was a go or no go situation in the body. So read between the fucking lines, okay? And it got to that point where it was either going to happen or it wasn't. And I just looked up, and the mountain was right there. Large as life. And I don't know why, but it was almost like I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around, and the full moon was bright as you please, right there. And I looked back over to the mountain and back behind me to the full moon. And it was really bizarre. But I've learned enough by not following my gut to trust my intuition. And I just kind of gave a half laugh and walked away. I just left. I just fucking up and fucked off. Now, he never texted me, he never called, he never asked for an explanation. Which is how I know that it was the right thing to do. Because if this guy was super into me, he'd know. He wouldn't have fucking let me go that easy. And I wouldn't have done that because I would have cared more. I didn't let my fear of being alone well into my 30s make me fill a void with someone that I didn't feel that much passion with. Whereas, some people let that fear say, yep, good enough. Well, there's my cuckoo clock. There's got to be some background noise in every single one of these fucking recordings. So, take-home message. How do we express courage? Shadow, sort your friend out. My fucking cat lets these asshole neighbor cats in here, watches them eat her fucking food, and then doesn't do anything about it. So, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to just fucking go into the kitchen and kick a cat's ass. Get out of here, motherfucker. And I hope you enjoyed that extremely strange caveat into my personal life. Take-home message. Here we go. When we're unsure if a decision will blow up in our face or not, that is okay. Because in my definition, in that level 2 gut brain, down the rabbit hole assessment of courage, that is courage. We don't know if we feel the push or the pull. Our brain is telling us to do one thing, our gut's telling us to do another, and we're literally fucking feel like we're bound up by ropes. We don't know what to do. What if, this is a big risk. It's risky, but I feel a pull towards it. I don't understand it. Make a decision. And detach from the outcome, because that's trusting and believing in ourselves and our own wisdom and our gut brain intelligence and our intuition. And guess what? If it blows up in your face, you learned a lot, didn't you? Oh, I've learned heaps. I've learned more from the shit that is blown up in my face than I have ever learned from the rational decisions that I've made. The fact of the matter is that we made the best decision that we could at the time, and that is the right thing to do. If it ends up to blow up in our face later, well, that's just the way it was supposed to happen. I used to spend a lot of time beating myself up for getting into the 2 relationships that I did get into, because it caused me a huge amount of pain when those relationships ended. But if those things hadn't have happened, I would not be anywhere close to the level of wise, as fucking low as it is, that I am now. I would not be doing this. I would literally not be recording this podcast, because these ideas for my blog and my podcast came to me after I had those breakups, because it led me down the self-development road, because I knew that those breakups happened because there was shit in myself that I needed to address. I was not the person that I wanted to be. I was not having the relationships that I wanted to have. So I followed my gut and started a blog. So yeah, at the time it felt like they fucking blew up in my face big time. But looking back, shit, if I didn't learn the most about myself, pick the wrong job, learn from it. I had a job once that I knew in myself, even though I was terrified that I had to leave, even though I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. It's terrifying, but I did it. And just in the nick of time, I miraculously got a job that paid me twice the money for half the level of work. That is trusting in the universe, and it's trusting in our gut, and it is fucking hard, and it takes what? Follow along with me. Courage. So how do we detach? How do we make these courageous gut level decisions and detach from the outcomes? Well, it starts by admitting we made the best decision that we could. The fact that it turned out to be a wrong decision is a false belief. It's a fallacy of the human mind. There is only decisions. There is no right or wrong. Because, and I know that this is a fucking stupid meme, everything happens for a reason. One of those sayings we all love to hate. We all know that it's true. Our guts tell us, yes, everything happens for a reason, but our brains say, fuck that. That hurts and it sucks. Because when you're in the shit, yeah. I recently didn't get a job that I really, really wanted, and I was literally throwing my toys out of my cot and crying because we have to allow ourselves to express those emotions. Otherwise, we suppress them and it manifests in weird ways later. See previous podcasts for examples. And a friend says, everything happens for a reason, Summer. And as I nodded my head, sobbing, I also wanted to punch them in the fucking face. Because that is our right to feel that way in that moment. Too soon. That's when we know it's too soon. But anyway, I'm going to blather on if I don't fucking stop. And I'm at 26 minutes. 20-minute-ish rabbit hole. All right, people. Me, myself, I, whatever, whoever fucking listens to this. Courage. Courage. Get amongst it. What is real courage? Will you follow your intuition? Is there something you've always wanted to do, but you're too afraid to do it? Because of money, because of you think you have to be here, you think you have to take care of this person, you think you have to stay near your family. Stop fucking thinking. Feel. Give it a go.